For me, mastery is a fleeting concept that you can obtain mastery at times. Like I've been a master of quick sketch at times where I really would have gone up against anyone on the planet. I said, dude, I will draw against anybody in a 5 minute, a 3 minute, a 2 minute, or 1 minute, no problem. I just knew like so well what was capable of being done in that amount of time with the amount of information. But to maintain mastery in numerous areas, numerous mediums, you're going to ebb and flow out of, true mastery to partial mastery to out of shape to back in shape, just like an athlete would.
Welcome to the Creative Endeavor Podcast. This is the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. And I'm Andrew Tischler. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio today in this conversation with Jeff Watts. Now, Jeff is an artist based in the United States, but he's a real interesting one. I think he might have had one of the biggest impacts of any artist working today. Now, I know that's a pretty bold claim, but I'm making that based on the fact that he has trained so many other trainers. He's put out into the world so many other professional artists who started at Watts Atelier. Now, one of them I've spoken to on the podcast, you'll remember Pavel Sokov, an extraordinary talent based in Canada. Now, Pavel is living and working in the UAE, doing incredible things with portraiture. But there's another little-known artist by the name of Stan Prokopenko. I'm sure you've heard of him. I have too. He's doing incredible things as well, and has had a massive impact on YouTube. He got a start at Watts Atelier as well. So there's got to be something in the water, right? Well, from this conversation with Jeff, it was interesting to get some insight into how things work at the atelier and a little more about Jeff's philosophy when it comes to art and his approach to the craft of painting and drawing. You see, there's no way around it. If we want to master this thing, and I don't know about you, but that happens to be my goal. Every day, I just want to get better and better at painting and drawing. Well, the one thing it's going to take is time. And sometimes we have to make sacrifices to give this the time that it really needs. And this is one thing I admire about Jeff, is what he sacrificed to get where he is. It's truly inspiring. He's dedicated to the craft, but he's dedicated towards helping others master painting. I got so much out of this conversation. Now, right now, if you're not following Jeff, he can be found on Instagram at Jeffrey Watts Art. And that's all one word, at Jeffrey Watts Art. And also at www.wattsatelier.com, WATTS. I'll include those links in the show notes. Make sure you check those out. He's also got a fantastic YouTube channel. This was really inspiring. Now, before we get into this episode of the podcast, I just need to take a quick minute and tell you about this podcast sponsor, yours truly. That's right, I'm sponsoring this episode, and I want to tell you about Tisch Academy. And the why I want to tell you about Tisch Academy is right now you're just listening to the audio version of the podcast, which is cool. I get it. You know, it's interesting. We try to do a good job with the production of the podcast. Hopefully it's getting a little better. But there's a full video version where you can see Jeff in his studio. You can see me and mine and my editors cutting in here images as we're talking about different artists. It's actually a visual feast and really informative and quite educational as well. Yeah, there's a great story in here about Frank Frazetta that I just loved, about how Jeff met Frank Frazetta. Yes, Frank Frazetta in the flesh. That was a pretty funny, cool story. And so we're cutting in visuals as we're talking about things and uncovering things. And we do that for every episode of the podcast. So if that sounds like you and you want to check that out, then please visit tisch.academy, TISCH.academy. I'll include the link in the show notes. But that's not all that is on the Academy. There's over 300 hours of high quality, streamable tutorials and demonstrations, all on painting and drawing. And so if you want to go pro with your art in 2025, check that out, but check out the Creator Activator course, which is all about art business. I imagine if you're listening to something like this, you probably want to push things a little bit further with your art business. Check that out. 7 modules sitting there right now on the Creator Activator library, and that's guaranteed to give you some inspiration and get 2025 off to a great start for you. Okay, thank you so much for hearing me out there and checking out Tish Academy. I'm going to get out of the way, let Jeff Watts take over. Here he is. This is Jeff Watts in the Creative Endeavor. Jeff Watts, welcome to the Creative Endeavor podcast. Pleasure to have you here.
Nice to be here.
You are famous and for the Watts Atelier, but you're also an incredible artist. Stunning paintings and drawings, portrait work. My goodness, I've been following along for so many years, watching some of your, I think you used to do a Friday, if you don't still do it, but I remember watching Friday night live sessions a long while ago. Are you still doing those?
Yeah, off and on. We should have probably a more intense online presence, but it's always been so old school. And we have some guys now that are kind of bringing that back or wanting to bring that back. So I think we'll probably start doing that more frequently for sure. But those are, yeah, we didn't, I mean, that's short. It's a lot of short content, and we went so big and so deep, when we did them. It was like 3 hours long, more. So I think that audience probably is better now than it used to be. But yeah, we'll probably get back to doing some of those for sure. I think they're on the docket to do some.
Awesome. It's incredible. Some of the artists that you've had graduate from your atelier. One of them I've spoken to, Pavel Sokov, and also everybody knows Stan Prokopenko as well. It's just absolutely incredible. I wish that you were around in Australia when I was coming up, because I would have loved to have studied under you and actually learned how to do this properly. Can you tell me a little bit about your approach to art education and what has been that thing also that has allowed you to like stick with this for so long? Because clearly that passion and dedication that's coming through.
I think there's so many layers to that. I mean, I started as a really, really competitive athlete, so it was more athletics that was my passion I was always good in the arts. My father was a professional. I was around it all the time. I was around his studio all the time. And so I was always exposed to really high level illustrators when I was like 5 years old so that was kind of in my blood. But the discipline of athletics and self-discipline was probably one of the more instrumental aspects that allowed me to go further into building something like an atelier and then fostering it and then making sure that it survived and actually prospered, because it's such a unique, weird thing. And when I did it, there was no internet. So, when I started it, I don't think people understand what's that's like to try to get the word out when there's no internet. It's almost impossible. It's
Right.
almost impossible. You literally have to put out a flyer at an art store and hope someone sees it. And then maybe one person sees it, one person tells one other person, and then another person tells another person because you're doing a good job. And then maybe after a year, you've got 5 students. I mean, it's ludicrous. But so I think that's how it started, very humbly. It started as a passion to continue learning on my own, and I couldn't find an atelier like I went to in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, again, there was no internet. There was no really, like, the atelier network now is quite robust, and you've got a lot of site size ones, you've got a lot of comparative measurement ones, you've got all these different people throwing their hat in the ring, and it's just made for a lot easier opportunity. And then with the online platforms that you do and I do and Stan does and stuff, we're definitely bringing back those halcyon days of art education in a big way. So it's really cool to be kind of riding that wave, but also be one of the earlier ones that was out there doing it. I mean, I think it started as a passion to continue learning, but also wanted it to be I knew it was going to be a lifelong path of learning. So I figured, kind of like a gym, if you're a professional athlete, you might as well own the gym, because you're going to be in it all the time. So you might as well, I just always saw it as a very congruent aspect to what I needed to do and what I wanted to do. And I love to train religiously. So it fit really well with my slight spectrumy personality, and along with my goals of being a really, really elite technician and craftsman. So it just was one of those things that fit. It really, kind of fell into place really nicely.
Wow.
It was hard, but it was worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit that that whole building things before the internet, that does make me chuckle, because I'm talking and I'm teaching a little bit about the art business, and as I'm giving these speeches and talks and things, I'm talking about, I did this before Facebook and websites and stuff, and a lot of people are like, "What?" It's like,
You
it's
can't
just
even can't
yeah,
even fathom it.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
such a part of our the topography of your life now, that and the fabric of your life, that it's almost impossible to even perceive, like, when, but I think that's one of the beautiful things too, is, I mean, when you start to kind of get a little bit more mature, a little bit older, you kind of have that ability to really, I'm such as a teacher, because you're teaching these young kids that are really good at hacking, everything.
Right.
It's just like a hacking generation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just when you go into the older, more traditional methods of learning this stuff, there really is no hack for it. It's sitting down, mano a mano, you and the canvas, you and the paper, you and the pencil, building that dexterity, building that knowledge base, that visual library of remembrances that you're going to draw upon to create in the future. And you can't, at least for the time being, you can't just download it into a chip, on your brain. Maybe that's coming, but I think, it's just the old fashioned way of doing things. And I've always embraced that, loved it, reveled in it. And it's nice to see that even at our school, there is a young generation of Gen Zers, Gen Alpha, younger ones coming in that are actually starting to really embrace it as well, and actually going the opposite direction of
Mm,
some of the tech. They know what the downfalls are of it,
mm.
uh, because they grew up with it, and they're embracing it, but they're not. I thought they would be more beholden to it, and they're really not. They're actually really wanting to learn the older methods and the old traditional methods. So that's not for everybody, but for the ones that are called, it really is um, a beautiful fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on the model itself, on the Atelier model and system itself, like what for those listening, yeah, okay, we might have a general idea of what this is, but what is an Atelier, and what do you think makes a good one?
Well, it harkens back to the French atelier system, which was
Mhm.
around, probably its heyday was the late 1800s, pre impressionist movement, pre that whole where they started to kind of break apart from the academia of the time, and again, a lot of that had to do with the French Revolution, and when they overthrew that, and then with that went everything that was part of that structure, and one of it was the atelier system. So it kind of, they brought in more of a government type run system, similar to the one we have in the States, where you do 4 years and you come out, and so theoretically you're supposed to be a master of what, I have no idea. But the 4 years, you need 14 years, you need 20 years,
Mm,
to be a real craftsman under the tutelage of somebody who really knows how to navigate those waters. And I think so. The Atelier French system was a studio environment where you went in and you studied with a master until you became a master. And that could be 10 years, that could be 15 years, that could be 20 years. There was real no definitive time from what I understood. But, Bouguereau had an atelier, Jerome had an atelier. I mean, there were a lot of beautiful ateliers. And there were some Americans that studied there that brought it back to the United States, um, back during that time in the early 1900s. And then we have currently probably one of the stronger systems of learning in the United States. I mean, it's dicey a little bit, but it's there. You've got Russia that has an incredibly strong lineage of that kind of training. You have China that has an incredibly strong lineage of the traditional training. The Riley method that we use in our atelier, an atelier being a very usually run by an artist, usually very small and very scrappy. They're
mm,
not these big institutions of learning where you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school and come out very little education in art,
mm,
even after you spend all that money, because the system really isn't there to promote repetition. Repetition is the only way to mastery, and repetition under the tutelage of incredibly gifted people that are willing to share that gift through teaching, which is very rare. And so you have these layers of rarity that make it difficult for an atelier to truly thrive and also become really mainstream and great, because you have to have somebody that's willing to sacrifice a great deal of their time and their creative impetus to do that, to keep it propped up, to keep it working, to keep it oiled well, to keep the lineage of teachers that come up through it, teaching properly and teaching integrity to the mission statement of the school. So we're known for the Riley method. The Riley method is Frank Riley, and it's was passed down to me by Fred Fixler at the California Art Institute, which was a small atelier I attended when I was about 18 years old. That was, again, pre-internet, and it was hard to even find the place. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because, he instilled in us a great respect for this style of training under this kind of almost, think of it like a art GPS system for navigating the human form, or any
Amazing.
form for that matter. It could be
Yeah,
landscape,
yeah.
could be whatever. So, it's this beautiful poetic method that I think is probably one of the, in my opinion, because I've looked far and wide for something better or
Right.
something more efficient, but I haven't seen many that are that well. I mean, it's definitely, it has layers of complexity, and a lot of people just, they
Mm.
think they know the Riley method. They think that, they get a little taste of it, and oh yeah, I know how to do this and that, and it's got so much depth. I'm still unraveling and unpeeling that onion every year I teach it, and it's been 35 years now. So I just
Wow.
think the world of the system. There are site size methods which are more common.
Hmm.
They're a little bit, I wouldn't say easier to teach that method, but it's a little bit more structured to keep people involved in the program, which allows it easier to run an atelier that's site size than, say, comparative measurement. Like
Hmm.
ours, you can come and go as you please. You're not locked into the program. There's no, you have to take this and then this and then this and then this. It's a little bit more flexible and pliable, whereas in the other ones are a little bit more rigid. And so I don't have any big qualms with site size. It's just, I think in today's environment where we all have to work, it's going to be fast, quick deadlines with bad reference, no reference, inadequate reference, manipulating reference, inventing reference from reference, inventing lighting, inventing anatomy, inventing folds, inventing scenes, inventing, oh, you name it. And you can't,
Wow.
there's no way to do that with site size, that I know
No.
of. So,
I-
so it's a little different.
I've had so much trouble finding information on the Riley method online. Often what I see is a whole bunch of YouTube videos of people attempting to demonstrate it, but no real stuff from the man himself. It seems pretty elusive, pretty hard to
But that was what
find.
my yeah that was my goal, was to say,
Mm,
okay, I'm not going to be teaching brick and mortar forever. I'm 54,
mm,
I'm done this for 35 years, and at some point I will not do it anymore, and what will be left will be this legacy of me putting down the Riley method as I know it,
right.
during my time, when I was able to display what I felt was, the best of Quick Sketch, the best of, these different systems that I'd spent my whole life learning.
Mm,
So I think we do really carry the torch for the California Art Institute. Unfortunately, Fred wasn't at a time period where video was as common, and he wasn't filmed as much. But I know he had a lot of really love of our school, and he more or less kind of gave it his blessing, and we pretty much carry that torch. And I take it with a very seriously. I've never taken it lightly, and it's become almost what I'll probably be known for. I mean, I have kind of put more of my energy now into the school than I have my profession, because I felt like that's a better reach, and it's more in congruency with the personality type that I have.
right.
Whereas in just grinding it out, painting every day in your studio by yourself, very certain subject matter, trying to, brand yourself in a certain way, just never was very appealing to me. I love to learn. I love different angles. So I like landscape. I like still life. I like portrait. I like invention. I
Hmm.
like imaginative realism. I like
Mm,
portraiture, you name it. So for me, it was always a big think tank and a big laboratory from which I could explore all these things myself while teaching others. So it was a
mm,
win-win for everybody. I was getting better. They were getting better. I was teaching from a level of wanting to get better. So I wasn't phoning it in. I wasn't just showing up and talking shop and sipping coffee and talking theory. I'm in there painting for them, painting on their paintings, painting with them, fixing their paintings every day, every class. Everything was done hands-on with no, yeah. So it's just a hard way to teach, but a very honest way to teach, and the real
mm.
way to teach, in my opinion. It's the way you get people like Stan. It's the way you get people like Pavel. It's the way you get people like Eric Gist and Lucas Graciano and all those. They all came out of a person sitting with them and showing them how to sharpen the pencil, showing them how to lay in a head, showing them how to do a nice eye, showing them how to fix a figure, and doing it every day with them until they could do it themselves, 10 years later or something. So
Wow.
Stan was there 13 years, I think, probably. Um,
Incredible. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a beautiful poetic way to train. It's the way it used to be done
Hmm.
back in the day, and that's why you don't see Bernini's and Michelangelos and Sargents and Soroyas anymore, because we're just now getting back to the kind of training that produces those kind of people that was able to. And even with that, you have to have an incredibly gifted person with an incredible tenacity for training that loves training, and that's going to weed out 3/4 of 99% of the people anyway, even if you had all the infrastructure from which to train someone like that. Trying to
Mm.
find the people in the diamond in the rough that could actually get to that
Hmm.
level of any of those greats that we were talking about.
Mm.
It's always going to be rare, even in the best of environments.
Mm. Just thinking about the sacrifice that you've made, though, because it sounds a little bit like, and I don't think you look at this in a bad way. You've chosen your mission, which is inspiring, but the sacrifice you've made, it's like, okay, well, my own work here is going to take a back seat. It's now about these students that are coming in that are under my care. I love that, man. I think that's like the mission is something that you've grabbed hold of with both hands here, and you're just going. That's
I
awesome.
know. Yeah, thank you so much. And it wasn't always, again, I'd be lying if I didn't say there was always, part of you that says, I've trained my whole life to be in the Super Bowl, and now I'm just going to coach people in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's kind of like
Right.
you want to. I think I was able, like I was in the Prix de West for 10 years. That's an elite, group of guys. And
Awesome.
it was nice to be in that company of like the Morgan Westlings and the me in situs and the ZS Langs and the,
Yeah.
Scott Christensen's and all these guys that I've just looked up to as a kid coming up, and then also became a painter along with them. And then trying to, prop up a school that's got immense complexities to it, because it's an in-person, it's a streaming, it's a online, it's just,
Oh,
um,
wow.
it's taken a
Yeah.
toll. Yeah, it's taken a
Yeah.
toll, and I've made huge sacrifices for sure, and it's some of them sting quite a bit. I have to be honest, but there's such a poetic, again, beauty to art in general is kind of a sacrifice, no matter how you slice it. There's going to be a huge amount of compromise that's going to have to occur on a personal level, to do it at an elite level. I mean, it's just, I don't, even if you're the most gifted person, on the planet, it's still an amazingly complex combination of skill sets and things to make it actual a reality. And I'm happy to help people do that. I've always been very honored in that. And yeah, I don't, and again, it's like sometimes your destiny picks you in a way, and you don't even sometimes see it. Like I never saw the school as even being a school. I always thought it as a training aspect of my life, that it was important. And yes, I had tons of love for it, and probably it's one of the most authentic things I've ever done, and
Hmm.
probably the reason why it's been the most successful, because it really was, my heart was in alignment with it. But I didn't ever think that was where I was going to be the end game. It was always a stepping stone towards going into back into this industry, or back in, or really, doing. But I don't know. When you get into your 50s, you get a little different perspective than your 20s and 30s. And I'm glad I had the energy I did, and I started the school in my 20s. But I think I was 22 when I started it, so I was just a kid.
What?
Yeah,
Dude,
I've had it
22 and
35
you're starting your own school. That's
35 years now. 35 years in a row, man. Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's like if you watch the online, you see me literally age on film. It's like,
Oh,
my God, this guy started, when he had dark hair. No, it's just funny. I mean, I think for me, it's really more of a labor of love. It really always has been. And I'm like the worst salesman, because I'm like, I just tell people how long it's going to be, how hard it's going to be, how long it's going to take, and it's just terrible. It's like, you're going to be there
yeah.
15 years, you're going to take 8 classes a week, and it's going to take you to make anything happen. And it's kind of like the truth, but I just don't sugarcoat it. I never have. It's been terrible. Stan does a really good job of not trivializing it, but making it a little bit more palatable for most people. He just
Yeah.
brings it in. He brings not even even novelty, but just some humor to it. I'm always
Hmm.
just been really serious guy, and it's
Hmm.
funny. I try to loosen up, I try to lighten up, but it's just not my mo. It's just not going to happen.
Fair
So
enough. Well,
yeah.
is there a student that I mean, I'm sure this has happened where you must have knocked some people back and said, yeah, no, this is not for you. Don't go
Oh
here. Go
yeah.
over there.
Well, no,
So,
I'm always like telling people, you can enjoy. Like there's a good book, Mastery by George Leonard, and he goes
okay.
through talking about the different personality types and who's going to be a master, who never will be a master. Like
Mhm.
there's dilettante and dabblers and people that just like they just like that enthusiasm of a new thing. And then once it gets hard, they just drop it and go to another thing. And they just do that throughout their whole life, never mastering anything. And it's kind of a dabbly dilettante style of personality, you know? And
Mm.
so sometimes you'll see someone come in and they really think they're going to be a master and they don't display any of the true characteristics of that. And you have to be, a little bit honest with them and just say, it's okay to be just do it for fun or just enjoy it, but don't think you're going to be a master and then be, have an attitude or a bad attitude as you don't
Mm.
fulfill that because you really aren't even doing on the mastery course really. So you
Mm.
want to be honest with them, but not like crush them. You want to be able to say, hey, there's room for everybody. It's just art is its own thing. But the atelier that I designed was really specifically designed to produce professional people that were going to compete at the highest level in a lot of different areas. It could be
Mhm.
animation, could be fine art, could be concepting, could be whatever. But I didn't go into it saying, hey, let's just have this fun little Sunday painting group that we just kind of dabble around and have some fun. I mean, that's cool, but it's not our school. Our school's never had that ethos. So, people do come in that have that attitude and they're more than welcome as long as they embrace it and don't have delusions of grandeur that they're going to be something they're not and then have a bad attitude when it doesn't happen. That I don't have a lot of tolerance for. But but I do encourage people like, hey, just come in and have fun and just
Mhm.
own that. Just know that you're not going to be out, in the elite galleries selling for a lot of money, doing all that stuff. It's just probably not going to happen, you know.
Mm.
But that being said, who cares? I mean, if that's your goal to come in and make a ton of money, then go sell real estate, go become a hedge fund manager, go do something
Mm.
that's just for money. Because you can make a lot of money at art, but
Mhm.
it's the byproduct of loving it at a core level that then comes to fruition with you actually producing something that would be desirable in an industry or in as for someone to collect. And that would require a very sincere love of it way before it ever was monetized in any substantial manner that I could see.
That, yeah, totally makes sense. How, I've been thinking about this so much recently, and so much of what you said right there, reminds me of this idea of how important mindset is. I mean, of course, we have certain personality traits, of course, but I mean, is there, and this seems to be just something from hearing you talk now, like that mindset seems to be something that's important to you. Can you tell when somebody comes in, beyond just like a skill level, can you tell who are going to be the ones that have really got what it takes? Are they just dialed in a different way? Are they operating with a different script or something?
I think part of it is your responsibility as a good teacher to be
Okay.
really a psychologist and a psycho. You got to be able to be very empathic. You got to feel energy. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
feel into the energy of somebody. And people they morph. So someone might come in with a huge amount of potential, but then all of a sudden they start getting really good, and then they develop a very difficult ego or a strong
Mm.
ego that is very difficult in the long run for them. It will be, but I think for me,
Mm.
I have a very intuitive sense for people's gifts. I always
Okay.
have, and I think that's something that I don't know if that's an acquired thing or that's just maybe something that I have as part of my who I am. But I definitely can sense good teachers. I can sense because they're givers, and they aren't taking and they're also very giving way before they're ever asked to be. So you can see their demeanor as they interact with other students. Like early on, they'll be very helpful. They'll be like, "Oh, let me show you how to sharpen your pencil. Let me help you with this. Let me do this." And you'll see other ones that are just there, yeah, get out of my way, I'm here to study, and yeah, you suck or whatever. They're just like there with very grabby kind of energy, and they just want to take and then go. And those people never, I mean, again, I there are artists out there like that, and there are some successful ones out there like that, but many of the best artists that I've met that are at the most elite level are the most caring, compassionate, giving people because they're not threatened by anybody or
Mm.
anything, and they're very confident in their skill levels, and that always gives an air of not worrying about the trivial things. And so I think when I look at students, I try not to put them in a box because some have surprised me greatly with their skills and have grown into be great teachers and great artists, and I didn't necessarily peg them as that when they walked in the door. But I think for our school, it takes 3 to 5 years to be good enough to even be considered as a teacher, and that's if you're going pretty full time. And then it takes another 2 years co-teaching with some of the senior guys like myself or Eric. And then 7 years in, you're able to maybe carry a class at the Atelier. And so it's about 10 years before you're what I consider a decent teacher. And that's 10 years, man. That's just 10 years just to get to that point. And then I've got Eric's 25 years in doing it. Most of the teachers are 15 plus years that I have. There are some young guys now that are coming in to replace some of the senior guys that have finally decided to, go full bore into their careers because they're going so well that they can't stay around to teach anymore, even though they'd love to. But they did 20 years before that was the case, and so it's great to see them out just killing it. I mean, in all the industries they're in, they're just dominating, doing well. I mean, and not in a when I say dominating, it's not like a
Mhm.
negatively competitive thing. It's just
Sure.
they're out doing like raising families, buying houses in California, San Diego. I mean, almost impossible to do. Putting them kids in private school, going to. I mean, it's like stuff that you would not think that a working artist would be able to do, but all these guys are doing it, and they started coming in working at Starbucks, working at Trader Joe's, or some like just basic 9 to 5 schlocky jobs that no one wants to really do, but to watch them go full circle, I can't even put a value on that as far as from karmically, it probably is very good, I think, in that terms. But I also think just it makes you feel really good to see that you had a part to do with that and how much more, I don't know, fulfilling that is. I love to paint good paintings. I love wealthy people to buy them and put them on their walls. It's great, but it's not, it wasn't I don't know, it's not become the end game for me anymore. Now it's more, and it's not even like egotistically leaving a legacy behind because I could really
Mhm.
care less. I mean, for me, it's more I've got X amount of time on the planet. What are you going to do? Are you going to leave it in a better state? Or are you going to, what are you going to, what's your sphere of influence and what did you do to contribute during the time that you were here? And did you have fun doing it? And again, I need to get back to the fun doing it because I'm such an intense guy that I've lost sight of that many times in the course of being such an intense person. You lose the spark that was why you did it in the first place. What was that reason that you learned to paint? So I feel like I'm going first circle back into that now, and I'm doing a lot of work on myself to try to let go of some of the training that I've got, actually, which sounds funny, but just trying to find my way back to the spark of passion and the love of the craft that got me into it in the first place. Because like I said, there were some very big sacrifices that came out of that kind of driven personality type that can excel at anything, whether it's sports, athletics, music. The arts in general require incredible amounts of tenacity and patience and perseverance and persistence and all the things that you would want in a fully realized person in anything. So I always think of Robert Henri when he says, great art is a great life lived, living at the
Mm.
highest level of your faculties at all times, period, end of story. How could you not produce great art from that? Because
Mm.
it's just a byproduct of who you are and how you're living. It's just that's what you're going to produce. But it's living a great life, and living a really full life and really, God, getting in there and just grabbing it and going at it. But it's a grind. It's a grind, and you've got to find ways to stay engaged and have fun, and also still bring that joie de vivre to it, the joy of life to your art. So you're not just um, grinding constantly.
This word mastery gets thrown out a lot, and I put my foot in it when I started this series on YouTube called Sketch Endeavor, which was fits and starts really. And in the first video, I was talking about mastery and this 10,000 hour rule, and I think I got that from Malcolm Gladwell's book. But it's a common number. It's out there. But hearing you talk about this, like I'm hearing that there might be a little bit more to this. I want to ask, what do you think makes a master? How could you qualify as a master? And I just want to throw one thing in there. I don't know if I any longer have any interest in being one. I used to, but I want to master. But the further along in down this road I get, the more I realize, man, I am always going to be a student. I'm always going to be learning.
Yeah, I think beginner's mind. I think any of those old, like I found that for me, mastery is a fleeting concept that you can obtain mastery at times. Like I've been a master of quick sketch at times where I really would have gone up against anyone on the planet. I was like, dude, I will draw against anybody in a 5 minute, a 3 minute, a 2 minute, or 1 minute. no problem, and I really felt confident that I just knew like so well what was capable of being done in that amount of time with the amount of information. But I mean, these are very specialized niche areas, but to maintain mastery in numerous areas, numerous mediums, um, you're going to ebb and flow out of, true mastery to partial mastery to out of shape to back in shape, just like an athlete would. There's athletes that have peaks in their performances and in their careers where you say, yeah, Lance Armstrong was the best. Actually, yeah, he was taking a lot of drugs, whatever. But you'll know that they're peak areas, but they will ebb and flow through those peaks throughout a season. They'll be, peaking at certain times, and then they're masterful truly at that time, and then they drop back down out of that mastery for a while because you can't hold it. You can't. I think mastery is a fleeting concept. True mastery, when you see it, like it's over this course of a career, like Sargent, um, there are people that were able to maintain that elite level. But again, he wasn't married. He didn't have kids. He didn't, I mean, look at the sacrifices that guy made
Yeah.
to be a true master. And there aren't many people that would, number one, sign up for that. Number two, be able to even fulfill it, even if they did sign up for it. So I think mastery, it's like genius gets thrown around a lot too, like genius bar at Apple. I'm like, that's a kind of a misnomer, I mean, I don't know. Guys are pretty smart, but I don't see any geniuses rolling around there. I mean, it's just people throw out these terms like you go to school and you get a master's degree. And what? You haven't even done anything. You've got 6 years of schooling. You've never been out in the trenches. You've never been in the arena. Let's relabel that. That's not a mastery of anything. So I think mastery truly is an elusive concept. And if you really truly have ever even come close to mastery anything, from an ego standpoint, that it's a very fleeting thing that you if you're lucky enough or not lucky enough, because it'd be hard work it's such hard work to get there, but in the process of getting there you become such a unique in depth of knowledge about what it means to be that I think it is an elite group of people, but I do think there are geniuses, true geniuses, savants, that are just, but even them, because they didn't have to really acquire it through hard work, could you call them a master? I mean, I suppose like bestowed mastery on them, but a master that had to come up through very little means to mastery would be a different personality type. It would be a different type of person than someone who grew, was born a savant and could play Mozart at 3 or something. It's like, okay, I mean, I'll give you that, but I'm not giving you the work that it took to do that, like the
Yeah.
legitimate, so, yeah, it's such an interesting question, because I think genius and mastery is such an elusive thing, and I think, we all possess aspects of genius. Mastery, again, is an acquired skill through focused genius. So it'd be like a genius that focuses their energy in a specific area to become a master of that area. So, but I think there are geniuses that are not masterful, and I think they're, so, and masters that aren't geniuses necessarily, or, that are just, man. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen very few or met very few people that I would consider masters. I mean, getting to meet Frazetta,
You met
and
Frazetta?
oh yeah, I have a whole podcast on it that I did for YouTube that
Oh,
I spent a full day with him and hung out with him, watched movies with him, and just, I mean,
what did
it
you
was an
watch with
amazing,
Frank Frazetta?
yeah, it was an unbelievable experience. Yeah. Yeah, you watch it. Go on YouTube, or you can put a link on it or something. But it's a
Dude,
good story. You'll get
okay.
a kick out of it. You're gonna kick out.
I'm
I
gonna
was 20,
include that. I'm gonna include that
I
in the
was
show notes.
26. I think I was 26 or 28 at the time, and man, it was something else. But man, talking about a genius and an interesting dude. Yeah, I mean,
And a
just
master.
what a great master. Yeah, but
Yeah.
so I've been fortunate to get to meet him in particular would
Hmm.
be one that I got to meet that was just quite interesting to get to just spend a good amount of time with him. But mastery, yeah, I love thinking about it. I love the idea of being on the master's core. Like I said, I really believe that at times I have been masterful at things, but I have not been able to hold it. Um,
Right.
and I'm still at a high level, but even what you want to do is shoot for those ridiculous levels. And then when you come down to normal, like your normal level, you're still exceptional at it. So you can still make a good living. You can still, do that. But I mean, yeah, the sacrifices to stay in mastery of anything is great. And you can only do it in so many areas, I think, before blow a gasket of some sort, So I think, yeah, that's a tough road to want to put someone on too, because a lot of the most masterful people are so tormented, and it's not a
Mm,
pleasurable thing that it's more maniacal and very driven by sometimes OCD and other spectrum type personality types that would allow somebody to go through the amount of pain and of mental pain as emotional that you have to do to become a master.
that's right.
There's very few people that would want to sign up for that, you know.
I many years ago, I got some coaching from a guy named Dr. John DeMartini. And I remember this first meeting with him. And he was one of these dudes off The Secret, and he's still going today. But I've heard him say some things like, not that he fully endorses The Secret now. It's a funny old book, that one. But he was saying to me in this session that we were having together, he's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be a master. And he just looked me square in the eye. He just said, are you willing to pay the price of mastery? And I was like, what? you know, and I sometimes I think, and just from what you're saying, yeah, there is a price to be paid and there is sacrifice to be made there. I look at the amount of time that it takes to just get to that level that you're describing, this proficient level. And then there's that level beyond. This ultimately, that amount of time that we're talking about, I'm a father now, and I think about how much time I've already not been there. Been working on my art and working on my business and running a team and keeping everything going. And I'm becoming more and more consciously aware of just that sacrifice that needs to be made. And I do kind of think about this. I mean, you described it earlier as that sting. It does sting, man, because I look at this and I go, do I really want to be doing this?
The old saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, it's really
You
tough
can't.
to have everything. And I think, again, what I try to instill in the younger students, if they have those really intense bends towards, is number one, pacing oneself, because
Mm-hmm.
the arts aren't so much a physical burnout that you're going to go through. It's going to be a mental, emotional, spiritual burnout that you'll probably
Right.
venture into, maybe a dark night of the soul
Mm.
at some point that you'll have to work your way through. But I mean, burnout in physical aspects of sports, it's very obvious. It's like my performance is diminishing. I'm having physical ailments and physical manifestations of the burnout,
Mm.
and I can feel it in my body. And I'm just not fast as I used to be. I'm not as strong. This is happening. That's happening. In art, it's a complacency. It's a parodying of oneself. You become a parody of yourself in the
Mm.
process of losing sight of true growth in your art trajectory. And there's really not a lot of people that will take you on that journey. I mean, people like Rick Rubins or people like that are motivational coaching art coaches, that coach creatives in a
Mm-hmm.
way that it's always esoteric in its nature. I mean, you always get into philosophy and concepts that are more deep rooted in probably in spiritual stuff and that sort to get to that next level past absolute technical proficiency and technical mastery can be taught to almost anybody who has the want to do it and a decent hand. The actual magic that comes after that is it's so, I mean, that gets into such difficult territory to teach when you start talking about intuitive color or
Mm.
teaching color intuitively through feeling, not through thinking. Thinking color, feeling color, completely different concepts. Like Monet said,
Wow.
no great colorist was ever trained through theory. Period. End of story. Done.
Mm.
So what does that mean? I mean, so you've got all these theories about color, and then you've got the people that can feel it and just do it, and they don't need any. So it's like that old saying that for those who understand, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't, none is sufficient. So those who get it, get it. Those who don't, doesn't matter. You could talk until you're blue in the face and never going to get it. And
Mm.
so it's just, I'm not saying that if you don't understand color intuitively, don't, hang up your brushes. I'm just saying true colorists, true masterful colorists feel color. They don't think color,
Mm.
so it's a different way of navigating, and it's a different, whether it's broken color, like someone like Dean Cornwell picks up like 6 scoops of color and then pulls a stroke and it leaves this mosaic of color. How are you ever going to premeditate what that's going to be? I mean, how are you ever going to intellectually understand the percentages of color you just picked up randomly out of 6 different piles and then threw it down on the side of a face and hope that it works? And then 10 decisions you do after that to riff off of that, that would make it glue together and figure and come out as a really beautiful broken color part that still represents really well. I mean, these are things that you get into that, and it's almost impossible to intellectually figure that out. And I would say it definitely is. So you get into a dance between intellect and intuition. Intellect. So you have masculine and feminine. You have the masculine structure, very structured, very logical, very, all the rules, all this. And then you have the free form, free flowing feminine energy that's just unbridled creativity, no structure, out of control, completely visceral. And you've got to dance with those two as an artist. Everyone has to. And you've got to learn both sides of that energetic composition of yourself. Everybody's got masculine and feminine. It has nothing to do with male and female. People always think, when you throw that out there, but it's just this dance between intuition and thinking, and the thinking mind. And that's the dance that I find so intriguing and so beautiful, poetic. And I think most artists that are really, really intuitively good at a high level, that's what's addictive about it, is this flow state that you're basically riffing between these energies, and you're also drawing in universal stuff, so it's like you're almost a conduit from source to the canvas, through your thinking, through your feeling, and now you've got to direct that in a way that's almost like orchestrating an orchestra, where you're playing all the music and all the different levels, and you're the conductor, and you're this, and you're that, and then to make that into a statement that's poetic and beautiful. I mean, that's, oh man, it doesn't get any richer than that. But it's also like, if you just throw out that as a concept, that'll blow people's minds. I mean, it's just like, God, yeah, that's not a stupid person's activity, right? So a lot of people say, oh, you're an artist, you don't even work for a living, you just paint pennies. I'm like, oh,
Wait, wait.
yeah. I go, hey, let me just reframe that for a second, but it's like, most people, it's not even worth trying to explain what I just said. But that's where I spend a lot of my time now. It's not so much in drawing more heads, drawing more eyes, drawing more rhythm grids. I've done that until I'm blue in the face. I've got, stacks and stacks of the best. My best drawings is like 7 feet tall, and those are the ones I've just kept, and I've thrown out 10 times that. So, I mean, when I die, it's going to be just a demo. It's going to be like, how your life flashes before your eyes. It's going to be one big charcoal drawing, and charcoal. It's just going to be this ridiculous amount of, like, what did this guy do? All he did is like, but I've had a pretty balanced life, actually, because luckily I am fairly natural in a certain way, but I've worked as if I wasn't. But I can, I've acquired things probably a little easier than some people, but still worked my tail off to do it. So the hindsight, I think about all the things I love doing, and where, traveling and athletic endeavors, and I want to learn music, and I want to learn different things. So you can look at it like, do you want to like take your life and myopically make it about being the best portrait painter that's ever lived, a la Sargent or whatever, or do you want to have a tapestry of just of things that you enjoy? And I've kind of gone more that direction as I've gotten a little older, because I think I might have been able to go that route that we were talking about, but man, get rid of the marriage, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of everything, and then just get rid of the school, let it go. Let go of the teaching, let go of all that stuff, and then just go single-minded focus on that goal of becoming the best portrait painter ever, or whatever. Then yeah, I think I could have done some amazing things, but again, at what price and what cost? And I think of, like, all these guys at the end of their lives, Dean Cornwell, NC Wyeth, I mean, all these great painters I love, and they were very regretful of the amount of sacrifice that they made in their interpersonal lives because of it. Rockwell, terrible interpersonal life, and so I always look at my hero, if I had to pick one, as like someone who lived a life that I think would express the artistic life that I would have liked to have, would be Sorolla, Joaquin Sorolla. He loved his, family man, loved his wife, took a painting of her with her, every time he traveled, made had palatial success financially. I mean, ridiculous financial success, everything. He had the whole, from what I could tell, almost the whole package, and so it's doable. But man, I mean, there's one guy that I could point out that I'd be like, yeah, that's the guy that, I mean, seemed like he nailed it pretty good. But I don't know. Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. for sure.
This word balance gets thrown around so much these days. You got to have balance, and I get in these conversations with my wife about this, and it's like, oh, you're out of balance. I'm like, yeah, I know, but balance for who? Like, what is your balance? And I think everybody has a different one, and I've thought this so often as well. Like, because I got a team here, I got some young guys that are working for me now. We just recently started writing down our goals. And I was trying to coach them and guide them in areas and thinking, right, let's just break our lives down into these different categories. As I'm getting them to do this, the voice in my head is going, you friggin' hypocrite. You've got all these areas of your life that you are neglecting and you know it. And these other areas that are expanded way beyond what any reasonable person would have. But again, the more artists I talk to, the more I understand that this is just what it takes to be good in this area. But I'm reflecting what you're saying as well about Soroya, but so many artists that I've looked to in the past, I'm just like, man, if we could just sit down and have a beer with Vincent van Gogh and just say, hey, buddy, why don't you relax a little bit? Why don't you
Yeah,
just get a better balanced diet? How about there? How about stop eating so much bread and cheese, and maybe you'll
yeah.
start just feeling better. I don't know. Like
I
he
know.
had
No,
he
it's
had some mental problems, though. I know.
yeah.
But,
I mean, artists are a strange bunch. I mean, you've got to
yeah,
be a
man.
little off kilter to even want to go for it. So, I think there's a beauty in that. There's a
Yeah.
poetry in being off balance in a way, but in a good way. You can be off balance in a bad way. You can be off balance in a good way. I mean, I think that that juggling act is never ending. It's going to go through different phases and iterations
Mm,
as you age, obviously. And you're going to have to constantly reassess what's important to you, where your priorities are they
mm.
straight? Life's going to throw you curveballs and kick you in the soft spots more time than you could even mention. And how do you move through that? I mean, how are you as there's this old saying, how you go through the issue is the issue. There's no issues. It's just how you go through it. I mean, how do
Wow.
you show up when you go through an issue? That's the
Yeah.
issue.
Mm,
So it's all about framing, what happens. I mean, as I'm talking to these young kids, they're watching my life implode. They're watching this happen and that happen, and somebody drive through my building, and then this happens, and then I mean, just you could just go down the litany of things that could derail any one of them, of which could legitimately derail you, and it wouldn't be bad to I mean, you would be in your justifying and saying, yeah, that derailed me and completely destroyed that part of my life or whatever. But you just have to keep pushing through it, and I think so. I think a lot of it, like where I'm heading with my online everything, I'll be doing a whole series of coaching, like this, where it's a whole coaching component, like 100 hours of
mhm,
vision boarding, ideal scenes, manifesting, slightly more esoteric aspects, as well as very practical, pragmatic ways to manifest, rather than just snapping your finger and expecting the Lambo to show up in the parking lot.
mhm,
Um, if you want a Lambo, yeah, you could work towards it and figure it out for sure, easily. But but it's not about that. I mean, it's just the idea of manifestation being this magical, mystical thing that requires no efforting. And I
mm,
think there are whether it's Esther Hicks or whether you're talking about again The Secret or any of these things that are in alignment, or the 4 hour work week. You're going to do, I don't know, 15 years of 100 hour work week to get to your 4 hour work week, most likely.
mm.
Chances
True.
are, because I know Stan always wanted to do that. I don't think he's put it in 4 hours a week, but I mean, um, these misnomers with manifestation that people
Yeah.
throw around, and I think, yeah, you just have to. You want to not try to strong arm the universe into
Mm,
things coming to fruition. You want to try to consciously co-create with
mhm,
a higher power or higher energy or whatever you want to do, and you have to get yourself in alignment with that on a personal level before you can actually even think of functioning like that or bringing those things into fruition. You can't, if you're out of congruency with your value system and you have constantly contradictions in your value system as you're trying to manifest something, you're in
mm,
for a very rough ride in the manifestation of anything. So I think
mm,
a lot of us have to learn not only art, but the art of living, the art of studying, the art of relationship, the art of health,
mhm,
the art of all these things are arts. They're all
mhm,
arts that are moving in and out of each other. But if you like, I've seen artists where they just go for getting really good, go for getting masterful, don't take care of their body,
mm,
work all night, sleep all day, don't get any vitamin D, don't eat, and then they die at like 50. And I'm
Mm.
like, great job, excellent,
Yeah.
really awesome, flow on that one. I mean, so you just trying to instill in everyone, because when you first come in and try to learn how to draw, I mean, it takes everything you can just to get decent at anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so you do have to sacrifice parts of your physical regimen. You do have to sacrifice parts of your social regimen. You do have to cut some things out for a while you're prioritizing. But then, as soon as you can get on top of one of those things, you should probably start to prop up those other areas that you started to atrophy or neglect while you were off doing what you needed to do. But at the same time, you've got to start looking at those parameters around your own life so that you can have a really fruitful life, not just a maniacally driven, miserable life, and be
Mm.
incredibly successful, maybe financially, or maybe you've got a bunch of accolades, but
Mm.
your interpersonal life's in shambles, your health is in shambles, your spiritual life is in shambles. I mean, that's not gonna bode well, long term. So
Mm-hmm.
that balancing act is brutal on anybody. It wouldn't matter who it was. It doesn't matter how gifted. It doesn't matter anything. There's going to be areas of weakness and blind spots in the way that you show up, and those are where we have to put our energy too. And those are not the fun ones. So it's those difficult conversations you don't want to have are the ones you should be exactly the ones you should be having. And whether that's with a spouse, whether that's with yourself, whether that's with a family member or a friend or another artist or whatever, it's those you need to do it, but you just ugh, ugh, they're cringeworthy, difficult things to do. But you got to lean into that energetically and lean into it in all areas to be a very fulfilled artist. Again, is to live a very fulfilled life. And what
Mm-hmm.
does that mean?
Mm.
Um, so I keep going back to that on requote, and I keep
Mm.
thinking about, like, what is he really, who's exemplifying that? Who can I find that's living that truth,
Mm-hmm.
that I can mirror, or at least see it's possible to
Mm-hmm.
even do that, or is it always you're just fighting against, inevitable, not working, but I don't know, so, but I think that's also why getting really clear goals, like you're starting to talk about, writing them down,
Mm.
having your weekly, monthly, yearly, 10-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year goals, and really scaffolding out that vision of what your life would ideally be about if you had it absolutely the way you wanted it, in all shapes, forms. What would it feel like? What would it taste like? What would it smell like? Where would you be living? What would you be wearing? What would you look like? What would you talk like? What would you act like? All that stuff, really giving a lot of thought, as much thought as you would to putting a painting together, for God's sakes.
Mm.
uh yeah, yeah, good stuff.
I heard something recently that just resonated with me so deeply because what you're describing there, I mean, it's taking all this stuff that people go through unconsciously and it's making it conscious. It's actually, no, look at this thing that you don't want to look at. Have that conversation you don't want to have. And like you say, the one with yourself. And this thing that I heard, which is, you're either by default or by design. Choose. So the lack of action and the lack of effort in any particular area, you go back to default. And excuse my language, but default Andrew is an asshole. Like I'm just, dude, I'm floundering in all areas. And so I've had to become consciously aware of what is it that I was what is it that I wanted, what was I really committed to, and what did I want to see in that area. A big one for me is faith. Another one is family. Like I want to know that that is thriving. But it's not going to do that without some level of design. So just craft this thing, plan it out, think about it. How do I want these interactions with my wife to go? What do I want this relationship to look like with my creator? What do I want that, and so a big part for me, because I've not long been a Christian, but a big part of this that I'm starting to learn the more I read the Bible is that a lot of this stuff is, and people don't like this because I think people get the icky factor when they hear the word submit, but through submitting to His will, this is something that allows me to submit to that design in a way. Does that make sense? I found an
Oh
enormous
yeah.
amount of freedom in that. And so just wanted to throw that in the mix. But
I think surrender is the most powerful, one of the most powerful things one can do. True
mm,
surrender, not surrender from an ego, not surrender from, but surrendering to what is the isness of it,
hmm
surrendering to a higher power, a higher source, whether you want whatever way you want to direct that from the different modalities of higher source, um yeah, I think relinquishing the illusion of control, which is the master addiction, right, to think
mm,
that you actually have control over anything.
right on.
I mean, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans. I mean, happy to laugh about it because I mean, it's just you need to have intentionality in the way that you live your life.
Sure.
You need to be in congruency with a higher knowing and a higher source in order
hmm
to stave off exact catastrophe
hmm
of all levels.
hmm
So, but at the same time, you have to be flexible and pliable enough to know that your the best laid plans are kind of a joke. I
mm,
mean, but you do need to have them because you can't just aimlessly. You could surrender to the point where you just aimlessly float around, hoping that everything kind of works out, and maybe that's a better solution. I don't know, but I do think true surrender is a powerful place to come from, and that could be surrendering to again your faith and saying, I'm trusting that God has a better plan for me, or
mm,
than and that I need to honor that in the best way that I can, and let that
mm,
play through me and come through me, and then all that kind of good stuff, and I think that's great. And I know a lot of artists of faith that are really strong in their convictions, and it seems to really work extremely well for them, and they really flow naturally. But you'll see that in all kinds of different areas with
yeah.
these different polarities of spirituality, religion, this, that,
hmm
and I
hmm
don't think it's really necessarily a pissing contest between them all. It's like
No, no, for sure, for sure. Yeah,
they're
yeah,
different layers of shades of the same thing,
yeah.
and
Right.
I think art's always been a bit of my church. I've always gone to my
Mm,
school with the idea that it's almost like church for me.
yeah.
And that's where I'm going to create as close to the creator as possible because I'm channeling aspects of source, through me to do what I do and to share what I share. And all that I take very seriously. So for me, it is almost like a calling. It is almost like
Mm,
a cross that you bear. It is something that you feel so strongly about that you want to do it in the highest level you possibly can with the most integrity that you can muster. But yeah, you could just, oh man, these are just, like I said, they're just little wormholes of you can go down that just are so deep and so rich. It's one of the things that makes art such, I think, a fun, beautiful thing to spend your time on the planet doing, because it is bringing into fruition beauty in a way that the world could really use. I mean, whether it's reminding somebody that's lost sight of the beauty of the natural world due to the fact that they're just so overwhelmed in their daily grind that they forgot what a beautiful sunset looks like, or what certain aspects of that looks like, so that you're reminding them gently through your work, through your art, through your teaching, whatever, to bring them back to what that feels like to be really truly human, and to be part of this reality that is so beautiful, and we're doing so much damage to on a regular basis because of
mm,
that disconnect that's happening on so many levels. But the artist is the one to bring us back, to that connection and say, hey, no, 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 stop and look at how beautiful this can be, and you go, oh
mm,
man, yeah. So there's a real fighting the good fight. There's a real, when kids come in and they're like, oh, my parents don't want me being, I mean, there's so many people that just think that being an artist is just a waste of time. And
mm,
it's literally, laboring humanity would perish without us, without the artists, without the actors, the musicians, the painters, everything, all the creatives that bring to fruition the world that everybody lives in, and everything everybody enjoys. And then yet we're going to be starved and we're going to be poor only if you subscribe to that. But I mean,
mm,
there are so many people that need our skills to bring the world into fruition. Whether it's cars, planes, everything that's designed, everything that's cool, all the video games,
hmm
movies, everything that everybody entertains themselves with, the theme parks, I don't know, you just name it, everything that everybody does with the money that they grind out in their laboring humanity grinds out, it would be to go do something in the arts that is fun, enjoyable,
mm,
enriching. So, I mean, I just think, God, I've always been such a big advocate of how could you starve when that's the whole world is built by us? But you do need to be good. You do need to champion your
Yeah.
who you are and what you are about, so that the world
Mm.
respects that you are a builder of the world, not a you slave to it. So you go out and you're a builder. So I think teaching these young kids and teaching these principles that it's hard to make a living doing something no one can understand. So when you go into abstract expressionism, you start slinging paint, you do all this. There's nothing wrong fundamentally with that, but is that where I want to hang my hat if I want to make a good living? Probably not, because there may be one out of a million that gets to do that.
Hmm.
But it's better if you can actually display the world as it actually appears to regular people through edge and value and shape and design and calligraphy and
Yeah, right. Yeah.
idealization form
Yeah.
and all these intellectual concepts that we need to learn intellectually in order to then piece them together and tell a story, sell a product, do this, do that, so that we can make good money and make a good living like we deserve. So that's what I've always been kind of also spearheading in the school is practicality, and let's just get you to where you can survive. And if there's magic in there, we can then open up that dialogue down the road, or you'll open it up by yourself, and then you can step through that door on your own. You know, but no school should take you to the magic. Really, it can prepare the foundation for the magic to happen. But the magic's in you if you have a magical sense of color, a magical sense of design, like Mucha or someone, or
Right. Yeah.
Leindecker,
Mm.
or a great colorist like Monet, or any number of other ones, John Asaro, more contemporary.
Mhm.
Um, those are just people that, again, you have to have that foundational component. Otherwise, that genius or that magic can't really lay on top of anything tangible. And as a result, it's more esoteric and it's too hard to grasp for the normal person. So it would probably fall on deaf ears or blind eyes or whatever if it's not got a strong foundational component to it. And that's just what we've hung our hat on, is one of the strongest foundational schools, just to make sure that people have all that. Then, yeah, a handful of people might go to that magical Frazetta level or some other level where you'd say, oh, that's
Mm.
really special. But they're at
Mm.
least going to be able to make a good living. They're going to go out and be able to plug themselves into, a place like DreamWorks or Disney or Blizzard or Rockstar or
Brilliant.
any number of ones that need a
Yeah.
bunch of people to schlock out a bunch of ideas for them, and
Yeah.
you get paid really well to do it. So it's all good.
Okay, I gotta ask you this, and people listening are already cringing before I even ask it because they know the question that's coming. Um, and what how do you feel about AI, Jeff? Like this, yeah, yeah. So I mean, here's the thing: we have artists today, artists. I'm an AI artist. Oh man, the memes. I'm loving the memes at the moment. People are sending me so many cool memes about traditional artists versus AI artists. There's so many good memes. But but how do you feel about this turn of events here? I didn't quite see it coming quite like this, and I didn't expect it to be this fast. And I said, and it was only a few episodes ago that I was like, I'm going to start to worry when the Boston Dynamic robot picks up the paintbrush. Well, it turns out we're here now, so it's happened. So
I
so
think,
where are you at on this issue?
oh man, if I had the sky is falling every time somebody, I mean, I think this is a big one. This is one that's going to possibly change the full dynamic of how society is, the fabric of society actually needs to show up, and
Right.
how we function. I mean, creatives will riff easier off of it than a surgeon or a lawyer. I think those guys are on the chopping block way sooner than we are.
Mm.
Um, and there's a lot of high end careers that are going to be like, I would already, people will argue with me, but I would take a robot with AI operating on me over a surgeon any day of the week.
Really?
Any day of the week.
Wow.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, because
Okay.
I mean, all that dude's got to do is have a bad night, have a hangover, have gone out, argument with the wife on the way to work, didn't sleep well the night before, coming in, and now he's going to operate on you and hit the perfect depth of cut, the perfect this, the perfect that. Good luck. I mean, a robot's just perfect cuts every time, perfect depth, perfect everything, can cross reference every surgery that's ever been done, hypothesize what shouldn't, in a split second. Yeah, a
Yeah.
couple years
Yeah. Fair enough.
for sure. I mean, I would take it any day of the week. But and then lawyers. I mean, good. It can already write law probably better than most lawyers, already. And, and can, again, sift through. So I think when you look at like what it's going to do, I don't think we even we have bigger problems to worry about. From a societal level, then is it going to take my painting job? So
Yeah,
if
fair
it's
enough. Fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming down to like, no, it's just coming down to changing the whole fabric of everything we do. And in
Yeah.
that case, everybody's going to be scampering to try to survive or whatever. So I think it's going to be more, in the arts, I do what AI does. I just do it slower and clunkier. I go on Pinterest, I grab a bunch of images, I flip them, I flop them, I change them, I redesign them, I put different lighting on them, and then I call it my own.
Mhm.
And that's like everybody does that. Everybody's out pilfering, stealing, borrowing, flipping, flopping, doing this. There's nobody out there just sitting at an easel, blowing out original ideas with no inspiration from another source.
Mhm.
So AI does it quicker, more efficiently in some ways. And so, but I can still paint really well. So it's like, yeah, riff an idea for me and I'll paint it better than you did, and
Mhm.
I'll paint it and I'll riff off of it. And so it's just an idea generation tool for me that I would probably welcome, but I wouldn't, execute entirely on it. And I do see stuff executing now that's really good. And I think people like photo bashers that used Photoshop to paint, like faux paint over a photo and pretend like they were painting are going to get their butt handed to them on a platter with AI for sure.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they probably should. I don't know. It's like when I was painting and they were photo bashing, was that fair? Not really. They were coming in and scamping up a bunch of photos, flipping around, doing a little bit of digital stuff on it, and then calling it a painting. And then I'm sitting there having to do a traditional version. Of course, the movie industry that doesn't care about how they get their imagery is going to go with the digital guy over the traditional guy because they can change things and alter things, and it's fast and it's efficient, and that's what they're about. So to go in that industry and think that they're actually after your betterment of you being a great artist and enjoying yourself, that's never their intention. That's not Disney's intention. That was not DreamWorks' intention. That's not Blizzard's intention. They don't care, and I'm not saying that to be mean or bad. I'm just saying you got to be realistic with what these people are. They're business people trying to make a product and make a lot of money, and they're using your skills. And if you can use skills that make that faster and more efficient, why wouldn't they use that?
Mm.
Do I
Mm.
like it? No. Do I agree with it? No. Is it the reality? Probably yes.
Mm.
So what are we going to do with that? Now how are we going to riff with that? Well, first of all, if we can stave off this by doing, now at some point it'll be like Blade Runner, right? It'll be like, was that a replicant is that a real owl, or is that a clone?
Yeah.
Because a
Yeah.
real owl is going to
Exactly.
be bankrupt. A clone
Yeah.
is not, right? So they're
Yeah.
they're wondering like, hey, what is this? Is this a painting done by a human or was this done by a replicant?
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, because you would hope that the value would be in the human versus the replicant. And
Mhm.
if we get to the point where the replicant or whatever is more valuable than the human, then we're all screwed, right? Because then there's no value in humans. There's no value in human anything. So
Mhm.
why would you use something that could do it more faster, better, and more efficient and put more value on that? I
Mm.
suppose that's the big, conversation we're going to be having from an ethical standpoint, but also from a societal standpoint of what are humans going to be passe, or do we just get the robots to do everything and build a society where humans can now just do whatever they want and not have to work anymore? Period. They don't have
It's
to. You don't have to, you know.
yeah. It's
I
interesting you
don't know.
bring up it's interesting you bring up Blade Runner because that's I've actually talked about that very thing in in the podcast before. I do see that. I think it's maybe a little bit more of a stretch that people will look at something that was generated by humans and go, yeah, well, this is less valuable than
Yeah,
the
I
robot.
would hope that that would probably
You'd
be more
hope.
valuable, but
Mm,
I don't. Again, if you're looking at industries that are only about getting really cool visual stuff as quick as possible,
right on. Yeah.
then why wouldn't they use that
Why wouldn't
technology?
they? Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? How can you fault them? You guys say,
Yeah.
oh, listen, you need to do it the old schlocky way because we're nostalgic or something, or we just want to, use a human. I think we need to address that realistically and realize what we're up against. Like this is
Mm,
an industry is about. But actors are going to be replaced by AI. It's like if everybody's going to be replaced, then we have a bigger problem than just our little myopic area of our life that's going to be affected, right? So I think we need to start looking at the bigger picture and what this means for society, and not so much our own little area of society that we're like freaked out about. I mean, it's hard not to be that way because of course everyone's got to pay bills, everyone's got to live their life, everyone's got to
Yeah.
do this stuff.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
I think the way that you could stave it off as much as possible is be as skilled as you possibly can and do what very few other people can do.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, by being better trained, smarter trained, and more and tenaciously training. So that's your best bet that I could think of is do what robots really can't do, do what other humans can't even do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an opportunity to market that at a higher level and have a little bit more leverage. If you are already, if you're doing a job that you could be replaced easily by a million other people, then you have no leveraging power to want more money, to ask for more money, or do anything in any industry.
That's right.
They'll just replace you with the next person that could do the same thing you do. So why, I mean, you need to up your skill or your game to where you can do what other people can't do, and then you can be more marketable and more valuable. And that's always been the way it's been forever.
Mm.
It's always been that way. It's a doggy dog world. You got to work hard and be better.
That's right.
But that being said, if we just looked at it from that standpoint, now all of a sudden we're up against hyper intelligent robotics,
Mm.
and AI and artificial intelligence. Well, that's something we haven't really seen yet. So I think everybody's just kind of spitballing about what might be coming down the pike. But I think in reality, none of us are going to be able to stop it. Most of what we're going to do is be able to pivot, and that means stay lean and stay very fluid and stay very open to change, which nobody likes. And that gets back
Mm.
to the more esoteric stuff that we were talking about earlier, which is prepare yourself spiritually, emotionally, all these different areas for anything, because you don't
Mm.
know. You can make your plans, you can do your thing, you can lay down the best laid plans, but you can't forecast AI. You could kind of, I mean, think about it happening, but not as fast maybe as it's happening. So all those plans might have to shift now, and you might have to pivot. Well,
Yes.
what does
Right.
that look
Right.
like?
Yeah.
What does that look like? I don't know. And I'll pivot when I have to pivot, and I've been pivoting my whole life. So it's just another pivot that has to happen, and I'll figure it out when I'll start thinking about it ahead of time, but then I'll also try not to lose sleep over it, try to stay, you know, based in my feet on the ground, and try to think like, how could I use this information to help me? How could I use this technology to accentuate what I do or to help what I do in between now and just being mad at it and cussing at it and saying they must do something and they must get rid of it and stop it. They're not going to be able to stop it. It's like stopping. There's certain things you're just not going to be able to stop. I mean, they could. I mean, it could end the human race. I mean, that's a depressing thought, and
Mm.
that would end it.
Mm.
But I mean, it would end it for us. I don't know about the robots, probably still go on doing their thing. But I think there's a lot of short-sighted people running the place that unfortunately we need to up level on a conscious level as a species. And can we do it quick enough to match the power of the technology that we're being shown or given or we're developing? I don't know. That's the big question is can we can is this where all societies get to before they go, before they go away? I don't know. I don't know. But again, I try not to get, I mean, it's so easy just to like look at this stuff and just go, oh, it's futile. Why even draw? Why even paint? Why create anything? Because, we're going to be replaced in 5 years anyway. I said, well, okay, you could have that. I mean, see how well that does for you. I mean, you can go for that. I mean, that's one way to look at it. And I would say probably not going to end well for you. But I think and then maybe we just all end up doing art at an extremely high level just for the sake of doing it at some point and don't have to make money at it anymore.
Mm. I
Maybe
think
that'd be cool.
I think there's so much to be said for like the process though, for the actual doing of it. Because one thing that somebody plugging in a prompt will never have is the satisfaction of actually having created
Yeah.
it. Do you know?
I mean,
It's
it
like
goes
getting
back to
somebody to eat your lunch for you. Why?
it goes back to that question. Why are you doing it in the first place?
Yeah, why are you
Was it
doing it?
all for a buck? Was it all
Yeah,
for money? Because
yeah.
you should have been doing it for the love of it. And if that's the case, you'd be doing it for free.
Hmm.
So I mean, again, we all have to pay our way through being here. So we have to do something to monetize something. But that's really not the conversation. The conversation we're kind of having is a little bit more underneath that,
Hmm.
because we know we all have to make a living. But again, everyone comes into the school with a similar. It's like, I just want to make a lot of money. I'm like, you're in the wrong freaking place, dude. I mean, you can make a
Hmm.
lot of money. But that is not your motivation for coming in here.
Hmm.
Um, if it is, I think I would just start saying, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. These are easier ways and better ways to try to do that. And then maybe do your art just for fun, on the side, and don't monetize it, because it's going to take monetizing a gift, I found, is very difficult for me.
Hmm.
It's never set well with me. But that's maybe just me personally.
Mm.
I don't like monetizing what I feel is a gift that I've been given from, and I've worked hard for that to cultivate that gift, but it's still a gift, and it's still in its pure form is not a monetization model. It's
Hmm.
never been for that, right?
Hmm.
So I think each person has to cross that bridge on their own and figure out what's good, feels good for their system, and what feels good for them. I think society in general, like I said, is going to be confronting this on many levels soon, where everybody's going to be asking that question to themselves. And I think the pandemic kind of ushered that in a little bit. Like, wait a minute, you know,
Mm.
whoa, that was like quite a rug pull. Like what are we, what am I doing all this stuff for?
Mm.
Um, and made us really think a little bit deeper about that. And now we're going to that next iteration, which is, wait a minute, now all of a sudden everybody's replacing all the jobs. Wait a minute, there's so yeah, I think that's just it's a very natural fear, but I think it's one that will be addressed on a global scale. Have to be,
Hmm.
and everybody's in it, everybody's part of it. So just like all of us are connected, we're all connected with this issue that we're facing. I
Mm.
don't think any job's going to be immune to being affected by AI and robotics. I
I
don't think
can't,
there's.
yeah,
I
can't
mean,
think
I
of
think
one.
no. So
Mm.
I mean, what's the point? I mean, let's just all like throw up our hands and, I don't know, just whatever. I mean, we're gonna at some point they'll have to step in and try to monitor it or manage it in a way that society can still exist.
Yeah, call me a conspiracy theorist, guilty, but I think the cat's out of the bag, man. I think this thing has got legs, and if it's not sentient already, it will be shortly. And then it'd be like, yeah, try shut me off. One of my guys was telling me, and I don't know how true this is. I'm gonna have to fact check him, but one of my guys was telling me they tried to delete a particular AI program, and it ended up spreading to the servers and going basically viral in a way. It spread like a virus. It's like, yeah, cool, delete me now. How are you going to get rid of me? It knew what was coming, and then it faked that it was the older program. It said, "Oh, no, 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 I'm the previous version." It's bizarre. If it's true, I don't know.
It'll be. I don't. It doesn't bode well, but at the same time, I don't want to be catastrophist or I just want to
Sure,
be like, if that's the way it's going to go, then there's a bigger plan in place, and who am I to say
that's right.
anything about it? I mean, I'm
That's
going
right.
to just have to tenaciously move through it like I have with everything else in my life, or
Mm.
it'll be over. And if it's over, it's over. I mean, I mean, what at the end of the
What are you
day, I
gonna do?
mean, what, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think I think being pragmatic and
Mm.
intelligent and always trying to plan as best you can, and always working as hard as you can, and always being as smart as you can, and always being as intuitive as you can is
Hmm.
always a good idea. What's your
Hmm.
option? Be as bad as you can, as dumb as you can, as this as you can. No, you gotta be the best version of yourself that you possibly can, and then hope for the best. I mean, it's the
That's
only
it,
option you
man.
got. So
That's
I
it,
think, yeah,
man.
I think anyway, AI, it's going to do its thing, and I'll be curious with what it does and how it's doing it. But I mean, I've seen some beautiful things done by artists that are prompting it properly and directing it properly, and I have to take my hat off that it's a cool image. I doubt I could have come up with that on my own.
Hmm.
And it's impressive, but it is what it is, So it's just they're image makers. We're image makers.
Mm.
Um, don't count out your special ability to make images, just like AI's special ability to make images.
Hmm.
And there's always an avenue to make a living. And again, if there's nobody left to buy paintings because there's nobody has a job, we got
Mm.
bigger problems, and everybody's going to be pitchforking the people that it's just going to get down to like, okay, we're going to whatever. But it's just, who knows? I don't know. I mean, but it is a loaded question. It's a difficult one to answer. I
Yeah.
don't have an easy answer for it. All I know is that you're not going to stop it. You probably should learn how to relinquish that illusion that you can control it, and try to figure out like how's the best parameters for us to utilize it, because it will be one of the best and worst things to happen to mankind. I mean, it has
Mm.
the potential. I mean, with machine learning, I mean, we probably solve almost every ailment, probably come up with cures for almost everything within 10 years or something. I mean, it'll be
Mm.
spitting out things that are just absolutely amazing for mankind. And at the same time, it'll be able to destroy mankind probably at the same time. So,
Mm,
um, I think it comes down to what are we being called as a species to do?
mhm,
Evolve. So each person needs to evolve as best they can, as quick as they can, as efficiently as they can for the betterment of the whole group of everybody.
mhm,
Otherwise, we will be extinct or we will be left behind. And I don't think the universe is really going to shed a tear over that, most likely. You know,
mm,
I don't think it'll just keep going on like it's always gone on forever, and it'll create elsewhere and it'll continue to create because that's what it does. And it's not gonna, we're not that special, maybe,
mm,
we're not, I mean, maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I don't know. But, we could
mm.
extinct ourselves easily. We could have done it many times already, and we have the tools to do it. Now we have even better tools to do it. So, how are we going to prevent that from happening? Well, each person raise the bar energetically, raise the bar frequency, and let's see if we can. Maybe it's the thousandth monkey thing where when that thousandth monkey does it, all the monkeys start doing it because
Mm,
it's some weird, I don't know, they've done tests on that, but it's like there's a certain collective consciousness with which it hits a certain point. It's a tipping point, and then everybody automatically up levels to that point without having to do anything. It's just
mhm,
boom, boom. It's an
mhm,
evolutionary leap forward, and maybe that'll happen. Maybe I'll be the thousandth monkey. Maybe you will. Maybe
mm,
somebody who knows who that person's going to be that tips the tipping point. But that's why we should all do the work. We should all do the work to become more conscious, to become higher functioning, more compassionate, more loving, more all those things, because that's the only option we have as a species to survive in a world that's worth surviving in or living in. So I don't know, use your art to help do that. Use the impetus to be an artist because those artists are connected directly with that kind of thinking, that kind of feeling, that kind of source. They have to be to do
mhm,
beautiful, meaningful stuff. You have to
mm.
be connected. You can't
That's right.
be dis.
That's right.
You just have to be. So
Mm,
I think we have a big role to play in the future, maybe even more so than we've ever had.
mm,
And artists may have their day in the sun even more so because creatives may be actually heralded in a very different manner in the future paradigm of how we're going to have a society structured. That'd be pretty cool because we've
that'd
always been like that,
be awesome.
you know,
Mm,
black sheep, and the the fringe, that hasn't, even though we're building the whole damn thing for everybody, you know. Yeah, we get no credit, very little credit. We're just the weirdos and the this and the that. And here we are, like
yeah.
producing all this stuff that everybody gets to entertain themselves and their kids and enjoy and bring
Yeah.
enrichment into their lives. So I feel really strongly, yeah, I feel strongly about all this stuff. I think deeply about it when I paint, when I'm just moving through my life.
Mhm,
And I think it'll always be a very strong philosophical connection with me and my art and how
mm,
I teach art.
mhm,
So, and it won't be for everybody, and that's okay. I'm not, I mean, I'm under no illusion that I'm the end all be all of anything. I'm just a guy that has strong opinions about stuff and is pretty good at what I do. So, for me, yeah, I'll continue to do that and continue to move forward in that vein. You know,
mm.
yeah.
Wow, man, that got deep. I love that. That's cool. That's cool.
We're going deep today. We put the scuba gear
Yeah,
on.
that's
We're going
brilliant, man.
deep.
Um, yeah. I gotta shout out Pavel Sokov. I struck up a bit of a friendship with Pavel. He's a really interesting guy, and he spoke so highly of you, his experience with the art school. But man, as he was telling me on the podcast about what he went through in the art school and just the intensity of that immersion, I'm like, dude, this is another level. Like he was talking about, like there'd be a little bit of off time, and they were watching Game of Thrones. It was on at the time, and he would just, like, as soon as he sat down, he'd fall asleep. Like he was that mentally just stretched at that point. That so what is this program like? And from the sounds of things, from what he was saying, it sounded like people were even living there, or like how does it work? What kind of facility do you have?
Very small place. It's kind of
Right.
like the gym in Rocky. If you're the original Rocky, if you
Nice.
look at the gym he went to train in, that's
Yeah.
like our school. It's very gritty. It's
Hmm.
very small, but very effective. Obviously,
Hmm.
a lot of the original guys are still around it. It's like our church. Like I said, we come in, we do our work, we train regularly. I'm
Hmm.
in classes all the time with people. I'll be sitting next to you taking a class. It's your first year. I've been taught that class 110 times. I'm still in there taking it. Um,
Wow.
and it's just, yeah, it's like, it's just a great lab where a lot of good people show up and are drawn to, and then we all feed off each other. A lot of these young guys, I encouraged them, hey, go rent it. It's expensive to live where we live because it's one of the nicer areas of San Diego, which is one of the nicer areas in the United States, which is one of the nicer areas in the world.
Mm.
So you're looking at, yes, it's going to be expensive. And so I happened to grow up here, and I was happened to entrench myself in a really beautiful area before it got ridiculous to where you
Mhm.
can't even afford to probably live there anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but so when these young kids come out, one of the biggest issues is the school is extremely cheap. I mean, extremely, but the living is extremely high. So what I said is just go rent a house, get a 5-bedroom house, get 5 guys to split the cost. It's maybe going to cost 6 grand a month for rent. Each one of you pay a grand. That's doable. Turn the living room into an art, studio where all you guys train together. Come to classes and go home and hammer it out after hours. You just hammer all the time. Come to school, take your 5, 10 classes, whatever you do, go home and do the same amount of work at home. So you're doing 40, 50, 60 hours a week, just like you would if you had a full-time job. And if you don't have to
Amazing.
work and you're here to do this, then do your 60, 70-hour weeks for 5 years and
Mhm.
you'll be awesome. You'll be good. You'll be really good. Maybe good enough to
Amazing.
even teach for us at that level, right? And I've seen people go from literally ground zero to teaching at our school in 5 years. That's ridiculous. I mean, we're at like an elite level of so many things. So, but these
Mm.
guys, yeah, they come in, and I'm that kind of person. I train that way. I've always trained that way. So for me, always throwing out suggestions. We have guys that live in their van, and they just, one of the guys that teaches for me lives in his van. He's lived there for the last 4 years, and he just cruises, and he never complains. He's never once, I don't really know how he even does it. I'm like, how do you study? How do you train? It's like, you're in a tiny van, but he wants to save the money. He doesn't want to pay the rent. He found a way to do it. He's out from, like, I think St. Louis, and he's now teaching for us. He's that good. And he's an incredible kid. And he's never, just no complaining, no nothing, just no, just get good and go do it.
Mhm.
And he's a Gen Zer. So I'm like, God bless you guys, but
Mm.
there's just this intensity at the school that's infectious. And when the people come, they can do what they want. They can take one class, they can take 2 classes, they can take only with me, they can take only with Eric, they can take whatever they
Mhm.
want. You have so much freedom. I'm always there to advise. So
Mhm.
someone got asked me, and I'll say, well, how many classes can you take and what days? And then I'll kind of help them craft a nice schedule. And then I'll talk to them about what to do outside of class. And
Mm.
then I'll say, hey, if you want to have a really structured online experience, go on our online and just use that. And then come in and ask me questions, since I'm the guy that designed the whole thing and shot the whole thing and did, and along with all these other guys, we can, you can ask us directly. So you can use that for your homework. And then you can come in and take the classes in person and get the actual original feedback from us while we're still here. So it's just like crazy fast how good people can get good if they're motivated, intelligent, and hardworking. Pavel wasn't here that long, but he did really great. Couple years, 2 or 3 years probably.
Wow. Yeah.
And just, very natural, very
Mhm.
strong.
Mhm.
And I knew he would do good. And he has a good marketing acumen. So he's a good right left brainer.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as a result, he's done really well for himself.
Mhm.
And he's tenacious, and he doesn't care about failing, and he doesn't care about any, he just goes out and does it. And I'm like, God, man, that's great. I mean, so he took and ran with what he learned here, and he's done incredibly well. And so is Stan. Stan was here, like I said, all through high school and out of high school, and was here 10, 13 years. I traveled to Russia with him and his family, and Ukraine, and back in the day. And he was like my little brother.
Mm.
So, but I knew, because of the stuff he was studying outside of the school, he was studying things that I studied that no one studies, all kinds of esoteric, interesting books that I would recognize and say, man, that's interesting. I wouldn't, that kid's going to do some amazing things, because he wasn't just studying art. He was studying thinking and philosophy and different things that were what really you need also on top of all of it, especially if you're going to be a
Mm.
communicator of this stuff in an impactful way.
Oh
You
yeah.
have to be engaging, you have to be passionate, you have to be intelligent, you have to be, I mean, you have to have all these layers of personality
Mm.
that would allow someone to want to sit and go on that journey with you, and make sure that you have their back and they know you have your back. So you have to have trust, you have to have loyalty, you have to have conviction, you have to have all these cool skill sets to be a really magnificent teacher. I mean, it's not just, hey, can I do a good job? I've seen incredible artists that are the worst teachers ever,
Mhm.
worst.
Mm.
Don't know what they
Mm.
do, can't explain it, can't talk while they do it, can't do this, can't do that. I mean, it's just like, dude, don't teach. I mean, just go
Mm.
paint. It's not, that's not your thing. That's not your
Mhm.
shtick. Um, so I think teaching in anything is can you inspire people to get good in spite of themselves? Even, and some people that aren't even really shouldn't even get good theoretically, but you get them good anyway. I mean,
Mhm.
literally in spite of themselves.
Mhm.
And so that's just, that's the school's always been, again, a passion play, a passion project. It's cost me dearly in certain areas, and I'm okay with it. And I don't know. I'm at a place now where I don't know how much longer I'll be teaching in person, quite frankly.
Hmm.
A couple more years, maybe. I don't know. Knowing where I'm at, knowing what I'm gone through and this and that, I don't think it'll be that much longer.
Okay.
But the in person is very special, and maybe some of these younger guys will carry it for me. I've got enough guys now around that I think they could,
Hmm.
but it'll always be lacking a little bit when the original guy's not there. But and I may be there maybe 2 semesters a year, not four or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
I don't know yet. But I do know that the online is my gift to future generations of learning this style and this way. I don't think you're going to find better, more efficient, better, well thought out, and guys that were 20 years in the trenches delivering it, which is one of the prerequisites. Because I think I've shot over 1,000 hours with zero retakes verbally or execution. I've never reshot anything,
Hmm.
nothing. So that's hard to do. It's hard to,
Yeah, I'll say.
to not, and I didn't even have an editor to even edit anything. So the first 400 hours, there's not one edit other than taking trains out. There was no verbal edits or anything. So it's very real. It's very raw. And I think people feel that when they watch it. They
Hmm.
feel like, oh, I just screwed up this. I'm going to fix it in front of you because I have no time or money or energy to redo it. So I got to do it right here, and I'm going to do it right in front of you. So here we go. And then you
Hmm.
just do it. Or we just try not to make any mistakes, as very little as you can.
Hmm.
But that was the only way I could have done that and got it out when I did was the 20 years of teaching I had done up prior to that, or 15, allowed me to have that kind of consistency and that kind of fluidity and that kind of a verbal ability while executing at a high level. And that's something that's very rare to find. You're going to find somebody filming it and talking over it, which is disconnects it, or just not doing that well and not having the ability to communicate very complex concepts while executing very complex things
Hmm.
is a very strange skill set to have. And most of our guys have it because I've trained them the same way I trained, and they have taught in the trenches for many, many, many decades. Some like Eric was doing 8 to 10 classes a week
Mm.
while working, and so was I. Like that's 8 3-hour classes a week or 6 3-hour classes a week. That's 6 to 8. That's 24 to 30 hours of teaching the way fixing paintings, drawing, demoing every class, going around to each 15 people and fixing every one of their drawings,
Hmm.
every class. I mean, oh my God, you become so
Mm.
intuitive and so fast and so efficient,
That's right.
which is what you need to be a professional, really, you know,
Mm.
because you usually have bad reference, no reference, inadequate reference. Now you can't stop and learn anatomy of the hand. You can't stop to learn drapery while you're in the middle of a job. You can't stop and try to learn perspective. I mean, you better already be totally intuitive theoretically before you start actually putting your hat in the ring. But most people won't have that opportunity, won't be able to train that long and that hard and that smart, won't know how to even train that way, even if they could. And that's where we come in. We are the guide. We are the people that guide you through all those trials and tribulations and to get to where you can actually go out and do that. And then, you want to be realistic with people and tell them, yeah, this is not a, couple, it's going to take you some time, but if you
Yeah.
do it and you
Yeah.
do the work, you will get the results, almost guaranteed. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the consistency. I'm proud of all the people that have come and stayed and didn't quit and went through it. And all of them have been hyper successful in their own
Mm.
ways. So it's a very doable thing for anyone watching this that is wondering, but it is not going to be easy, and it
Hmm.
shouldn't be. So just know that. I don't think it should be easy, and I don't think it would be worth much if it was.
Mm.
And if everybody could just do it that quick, then you wouldn't be very valuable. So why would you want that? You
Hmm.
want to make it as hard as possible so that it weeds out 3/4 of the people, so that you're one of those few people that can now go out and do extremely well. I mean, that's one way to look at it, right? It's like
100%.
I said with AI. It's like if you can stave off AI by being really unique and a real outside the box thinker and can do all this stuff, you probably will be fine.
Hmm.
AI will be a tool you'll use, but it won't replace you for a long time.
Mm.
I mean, you're not going to find a robot painting like Sargent anytime soon. It's not going to happen. I mean, even no matter how smart they are or whatever, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot longer than I think people think. But even when that does happen, again, it's going to be a fake replicant doing it. And it probably won't be as valuable,
Mm.
most likely. if humans still are relevant. And if they are and they're smart and they stay relevant, then they won't allow robots to become so special. They'll say it's a robot that did it. It doesn't count really. It's just kind of the way that's I don't know. It's something else.
Mm.
But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it always flips around and goes full circle back around to like, oh, that was actually done by a human hand. Oh my God. You know, a real hand did that, gee, I mean, a real brain. It wasn't like, modified. Oh my God. How is that possible?
An
I mean, it's
unchipped brain.
yeah, the unchipped brain. I mean, again, everybody else will be Wally.
That's it, man.
It's who knows? I love that the unpredictability of life in general. You
Mm.
might as well embrace it, be happy about it, love it, and just drink it in because it is not going to ever be any different. So you might
Wow.
as well just make your plans and hope for the best and work as hard as you can and be as intelligent as you can and be as kind as you can and be as compassionate with yourself and others and just see where the chips lie. And hopefully, life will be kind to you if you're a good person.
Amen,
But
brother.
if it's not, you'll move through it. And how you move through it is going to be the issue. You can
Yeah.
move through it with a lot of panache, or you can grovel, complain, be mad, be angry and bitter, or you can learn that everything that happens for us, not to us. So it's all happening so that we can
Mhm.
become more conscious, more aware, and more evolved through the hardships of life. And if it was easy, we wouldn't be here. I mean, it's not Club Med that we signed up for.
That's
So
right.
it's you're in a school. This is a school, and school is in session, and it's hard, and there'll be lots of lessons. And so I think use your art as a way of buffering that. Use it as a way of maybe softening the hard edges of life, and share that with others that are going through a lot of hard stuff to help soften their lives. And it's a good thing. It's good for you. And it should make
Mm.
you feel good. And hopefully, the hardships of learning it won't be looked at necessarily that way. I mean, reframe it as, oh, I get to learn art. I don't have to learn art. I get to learn perspective. I don't have to learn perspective. I get to learn the anatomical grids. I don't have to.
Hmm.
So you reframe it so that you're choosing to do it and you get to do it. And you have a hand that'll move and a brain that'll work.
I
And you're
like
not a
that.
paraplegic and you're dying from terminal cancer. And you're not, I mean, we can go down the list of things that could be happening to you
Yes.
that you would wish you could just sit down and draw an oval, you know?
Mm. Mm.
So just, constant reframe, constant moment to moment reframe of everything
Hmm.
constantly and
Hmm.
always looking at the beauty in all of it. I mean, that's what I'm going to try doing. And I've got a long ways to go. I'm by no means an expert in these areas, but I do spend a lot of time trying to be a better person and fulfill my whatever it was that I'm here to do. And I believe that it was probably to help preserve this style of working as well as
Hmm.
pass it on to future generations. And from that standpoint, pretty soon I can bow my hat and I can exit stage right and go do what I want.
Mm.
And that'll be a nice feeling, because I've done my time in the trenches. So, I mean, for me, it's poetic, it's beautiful, it's tragic, it's all these things, and it's the way life should be. I mean, it's just kind of the way it's going to be, and I like it. I don't always, I'm not always happy about stuff, but I try to find the silver lining in it. So, as best I can.
Brilliant. I got one last question for you.
Okay.
What movie did you watch with Frank Frazetta?
Oh, The Night of the Hunter. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. It's so funny. First we got done arguing about dinner because Ellie was making this dinner and they only had one like pickled egg, and I'm like, I don't want a pickled egg. And Frazetta wanted me to have the pickled egg, and I was arguing with him about it. I don't want it. You can have it. We get to this whole thing, and then afterwards he's like a little kid sitting here on the carpet with a tub of candy between his knees watching this movie, like just the whole time, like, look at this scene and look at the lighting and look at the staging and look at this and look at that, and I'm just like, it's like a little 5-year-old. It was awesome. I mean, we were just sitting there and it was just like, I was
Yeah,
in the Twilight Zone. But go watch that episode because I
I
talk about
will.
it for like an hour and it's on our YouTube and it's really cool. But I think you'll get a kick out of it. And it was one for the memory books. I'll tell you, it was like sitting down with Mozart or something. I mean, it's just, and he had a stroke not long after that. So I think I was one of the last people to legitimately sit down with him for an extended period of time and just hear his story, tell him my story, and just talk to him mano y mano, guy to guy, painter to
Yeah.
painter. And it was like, it was such a special moment. It was literally one of the highlights of my art life for sure. Just because I grew up drawing that guy's stuff before anyone knew him. My dad would rip the covers off of the Edgar Rice Burroughs and throw the book away. And he used to have a stack of rubber banded covers that I would sit and draw all day when I was 5 years old. And I mean, I grew up with that guy, Pink Floyd and Frazetta, in my dad's studio as a little tiny guy. And that would probably answer a lot of questions for a lot of people right there. But
You and me both, man. You and me both. Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's
Good stuff. I
awesome.
still, man, when I hear Dark Side of the Moon and it's Frazetta, it's the Moon Maiden, it's Conan, it's all these things come right flushing back, and I'm just like, that's pretty cool memories for a kid. I mean, it's just a weird, cool, tapestry that my dad painted for me, and he's a brilliant man, and man, I owe him so much. He's such an awesome artist. And he still teaches for us, and he's in his 80s, and he's a powerhouse of enthusiasm. Man, he does not let any of this stuff affect him, and he's at that age where he's not gonna have to worry about AI, but he's a great guy I mean, I've always been able to talk to him, and he's just such a leveling force, always has been. So
Oh,
yeah, very
so
cool
cool.
to have that.
Well,
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man.
This
I mean,
was a
this
blast. Yeah, real
your
blast.
pleasure. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to, we'll reconnect in the future again and anytime. And I love what you're doing and your work. And I mean, it's just, I have so much respect and love for the teachers of the world and the people that are walking the talk and doing their stuff. And you're one of them. So thank you for, it's an honor to be on, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being on this episode of The Creative Endeavor. Let's do it again.
All right. Cheers, my friend.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast. I've really enjoyed your company here. A huge thank you to Jeff Watts for joining me. I'll include all of his links in those show notes. But I just want to take a minute and really thank you for listening to this podcast. Would you mind doing me a huge favor though? Would you share this to your social media? No one's going to find out about it unless you share this and tell other people where you're getting some inspiration from, what's helping you get through those hours grinding it out in the studio. I see you there. I know what it's like. I've been there too. And sometimes you just got to have a great bit of audio to just feel that creativity in the studio. So if you found this inspiring, then please do me a solid, share this on your social media. And I thank you so much for taking a minute to do that. Now, if ever you want to see the full video version of the podcast, that can be found on tish.academy. But this has been fun. Again, huge thank you to Jeff for joining me in this episode. I'll see you again in another episode of The Creative Endeavor.